Hey everyone, I'm really glad you joined me today. We planted another hardy hibiscus in my garden space. No surprise there, I love the hardy hibiscus. And I filmed the first part of it with a new tripod that has the facial recognition, and it was overcorrecting, trying to recognize my face. It was just moving around, made you feel like you were on the waves. So I didn't want to make any of us dizzy. So I am refilming this part. The new one we planted from Proven Winners in the Summerific Series is the Cookies and Cream. And I really like this one. I saw it at the nursery and it was just absolutely gorgeous in full bloom. I have 3 other hardy hibiscus growing here in my garden space. I have Perfect Storm, I have Holy Grail, and I have Edge of Night. And you can see that all 3 of those have the dark foliage. The more sun you plant these in, the darker the foliage will become. They can tolerate some part sun, but they definitely like full sun for the darker foliage, the more showy foliage. Of course, the hardy hibiscus is a perennial. It looks like a shrub, but it's actually a perennial. Another name for the hardy hibiscus is the rose mallow. So the specs and the features for the hardy hibiscus Cookies and Cream, it says a night and day combination of matte black foliage and pure white flowers. Like other dark-leaved hardy hibiscus, full sun is necessary to bring out the deepest foliage color. The Cookies and Cream gets 30 to 36 inches tall, so that means it's going to stay a little bit smaller than some of their other hardy hibiscus, and the spacing would be a minimum of 42 inches to a maximum of 48 inches. So that means you need to allow that space, at least 42 inches, in between whatever else you're planting it with. It's hardy in zones 4 through 9, and this blooms just like the rest of them, midsummer through early fall. And as we said, full to part sun. So we're in my main garden right now, and we're going to plant it right here in front of this trellis. It doesn't need a trellis, but I just happen to have a trellis in this spot. I've done several different things here in the past couple of years. I've done a lot of annuals. I had all of my cherry caramel phlox planted in here that I am absolutely in love with. I grew those from seed with the winter sowing method. And then when it was time to take all of those annuals out, I decided I wanted to plant a perennial in here. So I bought a gorgeous bee balm, a raspberry bee balm. And I know that they don't like a ton of water, but because I use an overhead sprinkler system, it was getting too much water. So I moved it to my other perennial garden. And then I thought, well, what on earth can I plant in here besides annuals or I thought about a rose bush, but then I said, nah, I don't think I want to do that. Then I saw this Cookies and Cream and I said, I think that will do very nicely because it can handle the amount of water it's going to be getting without a problem. And there is well-draining soil here. The digging should be really easy because of the different amount of things, and there's really good soil in here, so I'm happy with that. I also want to show you one of the biggest mistakes I have done this year in the garden. I'll show you that at the end, so stay tuned. I'm basically digging a hole the same depth as the plant. I don't like to plant anything really too deeply. If you're new to gardening, when you take a plant out, if you kind of squeeze the can or the container that it's in, then it will help. You can even give it some pats. It will help loosen it up and be easier to take it out of its container. All right, it's got a good root system. It's not really root bound at all. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Oh, there's a big worm in there. Very nice. Good job, worm. Okay, that's just a tad too deep. All right, that looks pretty good. I see one bloom left here. It might actually produce a few more blooms before the frost. These start blooming around July, and they normally bloom until frost. I did find just a little bit of Biotone starter fertilizer that I had left. This is just to help the root system get established. And since it's the end of August, that's a really good time to plant your perennials. It gives you about 6 or 7 weeks before your first frost date, of course, depending on where you live. I'm in a zone 6B/7, and I'm going to mix that in a little bit. Just use the rest of it. And this is such an easy keeper, really. You can't go wrong with the perennial hibiscus. We'll go ahead and water it in a bit. That should be good for now. I'll be watering my garden probably this evening. As promised, I will show you my garden mistake for this growing season. It's not really a mistake, but you need much bigger space to plant these than I had them in. These are the dwarf sunspot sunflowers, and unless, as I said, let's see, look at I just cut these back. Look at the size, and there's a bee. Hello. Look at the size of the flower head. Huge, huge, huge. Now what I'm going to do is let them dry out, then take off all of the pollen producing part of the sunflower and get to the seeds. And once they dry out, the seeds will come out much more easily. And then I'll save the seeds. Here's an example of one that's already dried out. I cut it the other day. You can see here the seeds, and they come out more easily. I had one a minute ago that the seeds were ready to come out. This one's not quite ready maybe, but anyway, it'll be good food for the birds. There comes the seeds. So there's the seeds. I don't really want to drop the seeds everywhere because I don't want them all over my garden space next year. So now what do I do with these seeds I just took off? You know what I'll do? I'm going to put them in my pocket. Is that what I should do? Probably not. Probably find seeds in the washer. Anyway, if you saw my last garden tour, I think it was my last garden tour, I said I don't love these in this garden space. As I said, if you had a larger patch, then the dwarf sunspot sunflowers would be perfect, and you could harvest the seeds from them. But with my situation here, my application, they didn't work. Oh, there's a Japanese beetle. What are you doing here? How are you hanging on? Let's take care of you. Squish, squish. I have very few Japanese beetles in my garden because I've been super diligent to keep them at bay. I plunk them off in soapy water, and that has greatly decreased the population of the Japanese beetles in my garden. But anyway, I had intermingled these sunspot sunflowers in here with these, I forget which marigold this is, but this is for cutting and for drying. As much as I love sunflowers, I do not plan on growing those again. I will stick with the shorter and smaller branching sunflowers, and of course always pro-cut sunflowers for cutting and drying, and using in arrangements, always pro-cuts. I'm really glad we planted this together today. I'm very excited to have it in my Summerific Series lineup and to have it here in my main garden. And I'm glad you were here with me today. If you have any questions about the hardy hibiscus, please leave them in the comments. And there's a new little button that you should see in the lineup of the tabs below the video, and it says hype. So if you wouldn't mind pushing that hype button, that helps YouTube roll it out to more people. It doesn't cost you a thing. So if you could push that little hype button, I would really appreciate it. That gives me points with YouTube. Until next time, friends, happy gardening. Bye-bye.